My name is Elijah Rivers, and I was born into a family that cared more about appearance than love. We lived in a sprawling house in the hills of Connecticut. My father, Lawrence Rivers, was a prestigious real estate developer. My mother, Deidre, was once a ballet dancer in New York before marrying into wealth. And my older brother, Nathan, well, he was the golden boy. Captain of the lacrosse team, Ivy League bound, and Dad's pride. Me. I was the quiet one. The artist. The dreamer. The mistake they didn't plan for but tolerated because I was too soft to throw out. My childhood was filled with cold silences and perfectly set dinner tables. Conversations at home were like business meetings. Efficient. Measured. Emotionless. And I learned early on that being sensitive, being emotional, didn't fit into the blueprint of a Rivers man. So I retreated into books, into drawing, into the corners of my room, sketching until my fingers were stained with graphite and dreams. By the time I turned 18, I knew I had to get out. College was my freedom. I majored in architecture with a minor in business, something Dad said was finally useful for once. But he didn't support me. I paid my way through scholarships, part-time jobs, and whatever freelance design gigs I could pick up online. I lived frugally, often going hungry, but I felt richer than ever because I was finally living on my own terms. During my senior year, something changed. I met her. Claire. She was everything I never knew I needed. Funny, kind, and stubborn in the best way. She believed in me even when I didn't. She told me my ideas had value, that my designs had soul. And when I showed her my dream project, a blueprint of a cozy restaurant that embraced community, simplicity, and art, she didn't laugh like Nathan did when he saw it. She cried. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "Elijah, you have to build this." But dreams cost money. And I had none. Claire and I pooled what we had. She gave me her savings from tutoring gigs. I sold nearly everything. My computer, my camera, even my bike. I approached my parents one last time. I begged. Dad looked at me like I was begging for spare change on the street. "You want us to invest in a fantasy? A cafe? Do you think we're fools, Elijah?" I still remember Nathan's laugh echoing across the mahogany dining table. "Maybe you should design a shack behind a gas station instead. That's more your level." I left that night with Claire's hand in mine, her tears soaking into my sleeve. That was the last time I saw my family for nearly 5 years. What they didn't know was that I didn't give up. With Claire's help, I pitched my design to local business owners, partnered with a small angel investor who believed in supporting young creators, and finally secured a small plot of land near downtown Hartford. It wasn't the dream location, but it was mine. We built it together. Every table, every frame on the wall, every dish on the menu came from our hearts. We named it the Sketchbook, a place where people could eat, dream, and create. It wasn't flashy, but it was home. It grew slowly, then quickly. Articles were written. Tourists came. We expanded, remodeled, and soon, the Sketchbook became a cultural landmark. But then, 3 months ago, Claire died. It was sudden. A drunk driver. A quiet Tuesday night turned into a horror I still can't process. The restaurant kept running, my staff held it together, but I stopped living. I didn't even want to eat. Her laugh was still in the walls, her scent in the linen closet, but she was gone. Then last week, I got a call. "Eli, it's Nathan," he said, his voice too casual for the years that had passed. We're doing a family dinner this weekend. Dad's retiring. Everyone will be there. You should come." I should have hung up. I should have thrown the phone across the room. But something inside me whispered, "Go. Let them see what they tried to bury." I didn't tell them who I'd become. I didn't mention the sketchbook. I just said yes. We met at a fancy new restaurant in town. Nathan had reserved a private room. My parents were there, of course. Dad with his stiff handshake, Mom with her air-kissed cheek gesture that barely touched skin. My cousins, all dressed like they'd stepped off fashion runways. Even my niece, Olivia, who was maybe 10, wore a designer dress. "Elijah," Dad said, sipping his scotch. "Still scraping by." I smiled calmly. "I'm doing fine." Nathan scoffed. "Still playing with crayons and dreams, huh?" My mother added, "You know, Nathan just closed on a deal in Manhattan. 7 figures. That's what happens when you plan your life." I sat silently, listening, watching. Then came the moment. A young waiter approached our table. He was maybe in his early 20s, nervous, carrying a tray of drinks. As he set them down, his eyes caught mine. He blinked, his mouth falling open slightly. "Sir," he said softly, "welcome back. It's an honor." The table fell silent. I tried to wave him off, but he looked confused. "Your usual corner seat is ready if you'd like it after your meal, sir. On behalf of the staff, we're grateful to have you back, owner." Dead silence. Nathan dropped his fork. My father's mouth hung open, and my mother looked like someone had slapped her across the face. "What did he just say?" Nathan asked, his voice rising. I turned to the waiter gently. "It's all right. I'm here as a guest tonight." He nodded, bowed awkwardly, and stepped away. The table was frozen in place. My parents stared at me, trying to connect the dots. My cousins whispered. Olivia blinked up at me with wide eyes. I looked at my brother. "Yes," I said. "I own this place." A hush blanketed the room. My mother leaned back, her hands trembling. This is yours. I designed it, built it, with Claire." Dad clenched his fists. "But how? When?" I met his gaze squarely. "When you told me no. When Nathan laughed. When all of you turned your backs. That was the beginning." For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking under their words. I wasn't the poor one. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the man who built something from dust. Nathan pushed back his chair. "This is a joke." I stared at him coldly. "No, Nathan. The joke was thinking I needed your approval to succeed." He stormed out. My father stood, his pride visibly shaking. My mother looked away. I remained seated, letting the silence wash over me like rain. They left in a storm of silence and ego. After that dinner, I sat in that same restaurant, my restaurant, for over an hour. I didn't move. I watched the candles flicker and the wine glasses sweat, and I thought of Claire. Her laughter would have filled that silence. She would have clinked her fork against her glass and made some witty toast that would have softened the sharp edges in the room. But she wasn't there. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply sat with the strange quiet of a full-circle moment, feeling the ache of everything I'd lost and the weight of everything I'd built. The next morning, I woke to voicemails. From Nathan. From my mother. Even my father. Some angry. some pretending the night hadn't happened, and one from my cousin Emily, whispering with urgency, "Elijah, you need to know. Nathan's in trouble. Big trouble. Call me." I didn't call. Not right away. I went to work. The sketchbook was my sanctuary. We opened every morning with the smell of fresh bread, the sound of jazz playing from old speakers, and the quiet buzz of life being lived slowly. Customers knew me by name. Staff treated me like family. My office was a small room tucked behind the kitchen, filled with Claire's drawings and my notebooks of design sketches. That afternoon, while reviewing renovations for a second location, my phone rang again. It was Emily. "Please, Eli," she said when I finally answered. "Nathan's being investigated. SEC stuff. Insider trading. It's bad." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She went on. "Your dad's firm is exposed too. Their lawyer's been trying to spin it, but I think the walls are closing in." I thanked her and hung up. A week later, it was on the news. Nathan Rivers, once the golden boy of the Rivers family legacy, arrested and charged with securities fraud, insider trading, and obstruction. My father's company took an immediate hit. Investors fled. Lawsuits began to pile up. Public scrutiny followed. And just like that, the fortress they had built on wealth and reputation crumbled like sand. I didn't feel joy watching it fall. No sense of triumph. Only a deep, weary sadness. Because beneath all the betrayal, they were still my family. Flawed, cruel, selfish, but still the people who had once sat beside me at Christmas, who had once shared dinners and birthdays and photo albums. I remembered being 5 years old, building Lego castles while Nathan knocked them down and laughed. I remembered my mother's perfume and how it lingered on my school shirts when she hugged me, back when she still hugged me. I remembered my father lifting me onto his shoulders once, just once, after a soccer match I barely remember winning. Those memories came flooding back like waves, and I didn't know whether to drown in them or let them wash me clean. 3 weeks after the scandal broke, I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten. From my father. "Elijah, I was wrong." That was the first line. He went on to say he was sorry. For not believing in me. For dismissing Claire. For comparing me to Nathan. For not being the father he should have been. He said he was stepping down from the company entirely. That Mom had gone to live with her sister. That Nathan was facing serious time. And then, at the end, a line I never expected. "If you ever feel it in your heart to visit, I'd like to see the man my son became." I read it twice. Then a third time. I folded it up and placed it on the shelf beside Claire's favorite mug. 2 days later, I drove to the house I hadn't seen in nearly 5 years. It was quiet. Hollow. The lawn untrimmed. My father opened the door slowly, thinner, older, the weight of his empire's fall hanging from his shoulders like a wet coat. "Eli," he said, "thank you for coming." We sat in the den, where he once scolded me for not getting into Yale. This time, he poured me tea with trembling hands and asked questions he never bothered to before. "How did you and Claire meet? What was it like building the restaurant from nothing? Were you happy with her?" I told him everything. Slowly. Honestly. He cried when I said her name. I didn't expect that. "She would have been proud," he said. I nodded. She was. Before I left, he walked me to the door and handed me an old photograph. It was from when I was a boy, maybe 6, drawing something at the dinner table while Nathan played with a toy helicopter. "I always thought you were soft," he said. "But you were strong. Stronger than any of us." I drove home that night with tears in my eyes, But not from pain. From release. From healing. Weeks passed. Then months. The sketchbook's second location opened in Boston. A third was being planned in Chicago. We partnered with local artists to showcase their work and started offering scholarships in Claire's name to young architects and designers with limited resources. One day, while organizing the front of the restaurant, Olivia, my niece, walked in with her mother. She was older now, shy, but curious. I recognized the same glimmer in her eyes that Claire once had. "Uncle Eli," she said, holding a little drawing. "I made this." It was a picture of a building, oddly shaped, colorful, vibrant. "I want to build this one day," she said proudly. I knelt beside her. "You will," I whispered. "And I'll help you." Because that's what Claire would have done. And because sometimes, healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from building something better. From passing it forward. From turning pain into purpose. That night, I sat in the corner of the sketchbook, sipping coffee under the same hanging lights Claire and I had installed by hand. Jazz played softly in the background. A couple at the next table held hands and laughed, just like we used to. A young waiter passed by and paused. "Owner," he said respectfully, "Table 6 says thank you for the experience. They loved it." I smiled. "Tell them they're welcome back anytime." And I meant it. Because I wasn't the poor one. I wasn't the failure. I was the builder. The dreamer who never gave up. And now, I was home.